Hey, interrupters, welcome back to another episode of the Pattern Interrupt Show with Jess and Amy. Today is a two-part series talking about gender roles. We have four total wonderful humans that are going to talk about just kind of gender roles, particularly when it's in the workplace, especially as entrepreneurs. But today's episode, we're going to have John Jones, a really good friend of ours, and Katie Switzer, who's another good friend of ours. Goodness. But you've seen her before in our parenting episode. So welcome back, and we hope you enjoy today's show. And I feel like that's very interesting. The three of us bring in that unique experience because you, Jess, you worked corporate and then you stayed home. You were a stay-at-home mom for how long?
4 years, 4.5 years.
And then, Katie's she's like my husband. She's doing the day job and then the side thing. And then me, I've always been a work from home mom, really. So it's like we have these three different things. So that could be a good segue. So Katie, why don't you start on maybe like how that experience is shaping you as a person?
I feel that being exposed to the entrepreneurial environment kind of has like spoiled me for corporate. So I haven't really talked about this. So anybody who watches your show, this is a story I haven't shared with my audience. One of the main reasons why I started to really focus on my business is about a month after I Googled how to make money blogging. I went to work one day, or actually I wasn't at work. I was bringing my son to a doctor's appointment. And I had a relatively new boss, and he sent me an email with the subject title, Histrionic. And the body of the email said, if you don't know what this word means, you should Google it. So I did. And if you're female, the word histrionic has a lot of really negative connotations. It like describes a personality disorder that's associated with like being overly dramatic and sexual at work and is almost always attributed to women. And obviously the basis of the word histrionic is based on female anatomy. Mm-hmm. So that was really fun, but I'm an engineer and engineers do weird things. We have a weird sense of humor sometimes. So I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I went into work and I said, hey, that email you sent me, like, what did that mean? And he's like, oh, we have to talk about that. And I was like, was that email about me? And he's like, yeah, it was. So I went into his office and I was like, I don't really understand what's going on. And he said, well, remember when we had this discussion yesterday about this piece of equipment and you told me I shouldn't do this because of that? And he's like, I found that really offensive and like your technical disagreement was overly dramatic. And I said, so you think that because I had a disagreement with you and two other male coworkers had the same disagreement with you, but I'm the only one you sent this email to? Are you basically like saying that I have that disorder? And he's like, well, the shoe fits. You are a hysterical female. True story. So that incident in my life really made me question who I am, because I've spent the better part of a decade being a pretty talented engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer. I specialize in rotating equipment. I like to think I'm pretty clever. I worked at SpaceX. I've worked at nuclear power plants. I really know what I'm doing. And to have all of my experience and knowledge reduced to you're a hysterical female is like probably the most insulting and like oppressive thing that's ever happened in my life. And it really made me question myself and my self-confidence and my value in the workplace. And it's been a really big deal for me. And I don't really talk about it on my Facebook. I found it very hurtful. And I have a daughter that deserves better. And so that, I don't know how I got on this topic, but yeah, so that's kind of, it's hard. But I think it made me realize that my value as a person is not based on my role in the workplace. It's not based on like a corporate mold that people place you in. And it really made me strive to live the freedom that has been such a huge part of my values for, the better part of 30 years. And it's kind of made me take action. And that's what my business is about, because I want other women to know that you don't have to fit the mold of being a worker or being a mom. You can be yourself, you can be unique, and you don't have to just like lose your identity as a person because you became a parent or because you're an engineer or because you're an entrepreneur. Like, it's meaningful to me.
That's beautiful. Are you okay if we share that story?
Yeah, you can. I'm probably going to write about it sometime. I don't know how many people watch your show, but I don't
Not very many. You're okay.
No, it's fine.
It's a handful.
Well, I mean, we all have daughters. I feel like having a daughter has changed me 1000%. I am not the same person, and I have a very, I guess not very similar, but experience. But I do, like, I was not a feminist. I was not like, I was very into just traditional gender roles. I was very into like, this is what I need to do. And then I had a daughter and I'm like, no, like, I don't want her to be defined or fit into a mold that's not for her. Like, I spent a lot of my life fitting into a mold and trying to do what people wanted me to do, and including what I did in university or all this stuff. I'm like, no, I have a daughter. I want her to have all the same opportunities and not be labeled histrionic or labeled less than or whatever. And so, yeah. And I think just because it's a similar topic, then I'll wrap up. I think I did some things in my life because I wanted to be like a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to be a good mom. I wanted to be a present mom. But I always also was like, oh, but the dad's the more important role and all that. And then, like I said, now I have part of my upbringing brought that into, or my mid-upbringing. But then now I'm like, this is such an awesome thing for her. Like, everything that I'm achieving or failing on or growing and learning, and I can be present for bath time or to go to an 11 a.m. Like they do Halloween, they do 11 a.m. parades. Like, I can go to that on a Friday, or and then I can also like dominate my life. So I think it's beautiful, and I think entrepreneurial women have that advantage, which is different than the perception I have of corporate from you and a few other women.
I feel as though my path is almost the opposite of yours, because I spent my entire life fighting against the female gender role. Like, I really believe that I never wanted to have children. There's another fact that nobody knows about me. I never wanted to have kids before I met my husband. I wanted to live my life. I wanted to be like a high achiever in the corporate world, and I was well on my way to that. And then my husband came along, and our first pregnancy was an oopsie. And it really changed how I felt about it in an unexpected way. I think part of it was that I lost my mom the same week that I miscarried that pregnancy. And it was a very difficult 3 years for us, because we tried for 3 years to have my son. And it was something I didn't even know I wanted. And I really fought against what felt like the adversarial role of being a woman trying to have a child and being in corporate. And they truly are very headbutting. It's not cut and dry. And there's a super depth to mom guilt of feeling like you have to, only work 40 hours a week, because even 40 feels like an immense burden to you as a mom, because it's like, that's time that you can't go home and get. I mean, today, for example, I left work a little bit early, and coming to like talk to you guys, I also get, don't tell anyone, a whole hour all by myself alone in my house, which has not happened for me in probably 6 months. No joke. So I don't think that men really understand the burden of society that we have on us as women, the emotional burden, because if a man forgets to do the laundry, it's still ultimately his wife's responsibility. And it feels that way, even if it's not true, even if it shouldn't be true, even if it's unfair. That is the burden that society puts on us as women, that we are the household managers, that we take care of the doctor's appointments and paying the bills and making sure the laundry's done and the cooking and do we have groceries in the house. That role stays with women, even though over 50% of households now are dual income households. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's very important that we don't look at the men around us and blame them, because honestly, it's a societal change that is taking some time for us to adjust to. And it's not something you adjust to in 2 years or 10 years or 20 years. It's a change that has to happen over several generations. And so as women, we have to teach our sons how to do those activities and show them the partnership. And sometimes that means that we have to have difficult conversations with our spouses about, hey, I feel this emotional burden. And even though you help me around the house, you treat it like helping and not like responsibility. And it's a different feeling. It's not the same. So that's a conversation that we've had in my marriage more than once, because it's an important conversation to have. And when it hits that tipping point, you don't want it to go into anger territory where you're like holding it all in and then it explodes. So anyway, there's a lot of roles there. It's a very interesting topic.
It is a very interesting topic.
I'm feeling very reflective and introspective today. So
maybe we caught you on a good day. Yeah, Jess, I'd like to hear your side, how it's shaped you as a human, a woman, and an entrepreneur.
So I, like Katie, I didn't ever really want kids or a family. My goals were career aspirations and goals. And my career sometimes weren't really set up to have a family. So I was offered a corporate training job where I'd be traveling 3 weeks out of every month in the Midwest. So I would be living in extended stay hotels. So clearly that's not really conducive of a family life. So I felt like all of the positions that I had in my career really were very career oriented. I mean, that it was your life. So I don't know, all of a sudden one day, I don't know if it was like an internal clock or what, but I was like, okay, like I'm meant to be a mom. Like that's who I am. Like that's what is supposed to happen to me. And I didn't even have, I think, a boyfriend at the time. Like I didn't know my husband. So I'm like, okay, someone's going to implant children in me and I'm going to be their mother and it's going to be glorious. But no, it's just kind of funny. Something just clicked in my mind and I was like, okay, you know, I'm meant to have kids. So then of course, you know, I worked with my husband and all that. So then as soon as I got pregnant, I worked on my exit strategy to leave my corporate life because I was working, 40, 60 hours and work was my life. And I knew having a child, my life really wasn't I was, giving my life to someone else. And not in a bad way, in a good way. I think until recently I realized that, I have to be taken care of before my kids can be taken care of. But nonetheless, I knew that working the job I couldn't sustain, having a successful, happy career, and in turn having a happy family life. They didn't go hand in hand to me. So then after staying at home for a while, I was like, okay, I gotta work. Like I can't, I love my kids, I love my family, but I feel like I am wasting my talents. I needed value because I knew that I had a skill set that other people could, benefit from. And really what pushed me was my kids, my daughter, for sure, especially. I say it a lot. I hated working for the man and I wanted to be the man. And really in those like gender role terms, it is different for women. All of the innuendos and everything that we get to deal with because we don't have the man bits is definitely something that I think should be addressed. And it's also important to me that, you know, to work for myself and show my daughter that, yes, you can work for yourself and you can be happy. And I mean, if you're not, you can still be an employee. As my husband, he has a day job and he's extremely happy with his career. So I don't know, making those opportunities, being able to be visualized or seen or lived through with my daughter is really, really important to me and has kind of made me do what I do.
It's beautiful. We all have such different journeys, yet I feel like here we are.
Right? I know.
Yeah.
So we're here with John Jones, and we're going to talk a little bit about gender roles. First of all, John has children of the opposite sex, so you can come from that point of view as well. But first, let's talk about gender roles in the workplace. So you're in IT. You're a dude. I wonder that I assume there's not a lot of females in the IT world. So let's talk a little bit about that.
First of all, should we be assuming that? But it's probably, yeah.
I know. I still like you, ladies.
Got to do the head shake. Yeah. Did you just assume my... But
I'll make an ass out of me.
So, no, absolutely. The IT industry is one of the worst industries for women to work in because it is a sexist industry. I would always be the first to admit. And this is the thing. When it comes to women in IT, I've worked with some fantastic women who would wipe the floor with me with my knowledge. And I prefer working with women. Contrary to what most blokes might say, I prefer working with women because I get along better with women. And it's nice because blokes are very proud people. Blokes do work very proud, and a lot. You'll find a woman is more likely to ask for help, which is absolutely key in any industry. You've got to ask for help. So I've always maintained my first and second full-time member of staff is going to be one male, one female. A lot of people might cringe at me and say, well, you can't rule out men. If you can have two men that are better, well, sue me. Sorry, but I don't care. Whose business is it? That's my stance. If I had two candidates and I had one guy, one woman, and I had two blokes who were clearly a lot better, I'd still make it equal. So I'd like the whole one man, one woman approach to the workplace, because I think it's just a nice mesh of different skill sets. Because growing up, girls matured quicker than boys. We can never argue this fact that I was immature probably till last year, I think. And my sisters, my partner, were all very mature before I was. But it's nice to have a bit of immaturity in the workplace as well. It can't all be serious. So it's nice to get a good blend of skill sets and maturity level in the workplace. It's definitely how a good workplace should be.
I like that point too, that it's that if it's three guys, first of all, you're lacking that diversity, which I know is, especially in the States, we have affirmative action, we have all these like quotas we have to meet. I'm like, but the beautiful advantage of any project or relationship is that diversity, and sometimes ensuring that will have better outcomes. So I like that point. I didn't even think about that point.
I agree. I didn't even think about that. I mean, you have all sides of the spectrum. I mean, having men and women, and it's so like, it's important for me to think of people as equal, but obviously that's not how our society is. I hope it can be one day, but we can still be equal, but bring different things, different attributes to a project or a company. So let's talk about gender roles as far as your kids go. So you have a boy and a girl, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So what things are important for you to instill in your children, or that they, can understand in growing up?
Okay, so between the two, equality is absolutely paramount. And a lot of kids will force this on parents anyway, because you've got the whole I cannot buy for one and not the other. But it's key to understand that if you buy a toy car for a boy, you've got to go out and buy a toy doll for a girl. We've got to get away from that whole perspective, because my daughter loves toy cars and she loves the color blue. The eldest loves toy cars and he loves the color blue. So when we buy things now, we buy them in pairs, equal, because quite often enough, they'll argue over, well, he's got my car or she's got my car, where if they're the exactly same, then it doesn't matter. You put them down, first one to get to the first car wins, kind of thing. But between the two of them,
Sorry, that's really funny.
They're still very much individual in the way of they like their own things, like TV shows. I think the eldest, he does like more feminine shows. He'll quite happily sit down and watch Sophia the First, quite happily. And then the youngest will sit down and watch Blaze and the Monster Machines because it's got cars in it. But they quite often just get distracted by TV anyway, so I don't know if that is an equality thing or it's just something good to watch on the telly at the time. But definitely, you've got to make sure that both kids you understand what they like. We can never assume that they're going to like something just because we think they like something. And PJ Masks is the big one for my daughter at the moment. If the eldest goes near any of her PJ Masks, it's almost like death match comes to the household.
I feel this so hard to my core.
Yeah.
I don't know what these are. I'm gonna have to Google them.
I mean, it's if the eldest goes near it, you've got dogs barking, you've got high-pitched noises, and then my daughter screaming. It's like, quick, cover the windows before they shatter, because it is almost ear-piercing. And it's like, oh, darling, Daddy's hearing's going to go before he retires. Yeah, so I'm feeling a bit old from the sound effects of this argument.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's almost playing referee, but I've got my shirt ready for that one. I just need to go in the inside pocket and pull out some yellow and red cards, but my kids would just go straight to red cards, seriously.
Thank you so much for watching our Gender Roles Part 1 episode with Katie and John. We look forward to seeing you next week, where we're doing Part 2 of Gender Roles with Jessica Foster and Andrew Arnold. Have a great week, Interrupters. Great.
Yes.
Outro. Katie and John. Thank you guys so much for watching our episode with Katie and John, Gender Roles Part 1. Stay tuned for next week, Gender Roles Part 2, where we will be talking to Jessica Foster and Andrew Arnold. See you then. Oh my God, I almost called her LSJ. Did you see me look down?
Yeah. That's totally fine. Okay.